Organ Player and Singing Girl by Eugène Atget. Look at this photograph for a moment. An old man pushes a heavy cart through a Paris street, his face weathered and distant, his posture stoic. And behind him, almost hidden, a young woman leans forward, her arm outstretched, her face lit up with the most genuine, unguarded smile you can imagine. This is not a painting. This is not a posed studio portrait. This is a stolen moment from Paris, sometime around 1898, and it was captured by one of the most important photographers in history, a man most people have never heard of. His name was Eugène Atget. Jean-Eugène Auguste Atget was born in 1857 in Libourne, France, a small town near Bordeaux. By the time he was 7 years old, both of his parents had died, and he was raised by his grandparents. He spent his early years as a sailor, then tried his hand at acting, without much success. He worked in provincial theater for years, struggling at the margins of the art world. It was only in his mid-30s, around 1888, that Atget picked up a camera. And even then, his ambitions were modest, at least on the surface. He sold his photographs as reference material to painters, illustrators, and craftsmen who needed visual documentation of old Paris. He even advertised his services with a humble handwritten sign, "Documents for Artists." Documents for artists. Not masterworks, not art, documents. And yet, over the next 4 decades, Atget would produce more than 8,000 photographs, an extraordinary visual archive of a city on the verge of vanishing. He photographed storefronts, stairwells, courtyards, fountains, street vendors, circus performers, prostitutes in doorways, and rag pickers with their carts. He walked through Paris before dawn, carrying a large-format wooden camera and glass plates, chasing the soft light of early morning. Atget largely worked in poverty and near-total obscurity. He was not celebrated during his lifetime. He died in 1927, alone and almost forgotten, in a small apartment in Montparnasse. It was only after his death, when the American photographer Berenice Abbott rescued his archive and brought it to New York, that the world began to understand what Atget had actually done. Now let us return to this image. The title tells us, Organ Player and Singing Girl, Paris, circa 1898. The man at the center is an itinerant street musician, a hurdy-gurdy player or barrel organ player, one of the countless working-class figures who eked out a living by entertaining pedestrians for small coins. His coat is dark and worn. His hat is a simple bowler. He grips the handles of his cart with the weight of a man who has pushed it for many miles, through many days, across many seasons. His expression gives nothing away. He looks forward or perhaps nowhere at all. But then there is the woman. She appears from behind, reaching one arm forward onto the cart, her body bent slightly with effort or perhaps playfulness, and she is laughing, fully, openly, completely laughing. There is no performance in that smile. It is the laugh of someone who finds something genuinely funny, perhaps the photographer himself, perhaps something the old man said, perhaps simply the absurdity of being alive and working in the streets of Paris on an ordinary morning. The contrast between these two figures is the emotional heart of this photograph, the heaviness of the man, the lightness of the woman, age and youth, silence and laughter, the weight of a life of labor and the unburdened joy of a single moment. What Atget understood, perhaps intuitively, without ever theorizing it, was that the ordinary is sacred, that the people who exist at the edges of society, who are invisible to power and irrelevant to history, are precisely the people most worth photographing. The organ player and the singing girl would not appear in any newspaper. No one would commission a portrait of them. Their names are unknown to us now, and were likely unknown to most people even then. And yet here they are, more alive than most subjects of official portraiture. Here they are, preserved in silver and light, still moving through Paris more than a century after that morning. Atget's photographs are also documents of loss. Much of what he captured no longer exists. Streets have been demolished, storefronts replaced, entire neighborhoods erased. His archive is, in a very real sense, a memory of a city, a record of what human beings built and lived and sold and sang before modernity swept it away. There is something quietly radical about a photograph like this one. In an era when photography was still largely associated with wealth, portraiture, and official record-keeping, Atget turned his lens toward the forgotten. He made beauty out of poverty. He made permanence out of the ephemeral. That singing girl, whoever she was, laughed for just a fraction of a second on a Paris morning in 1898. And because Eugène Atget was there, with his wooden camera and his glass plates and his artist's eye disguised as a documentarian's practicality, that laugh has lasted 120 years. That is what photography can do at its greatest. And that is what Atget, quietly and without recognition, spent his entire life doing.